Hey everybody, we are on the air live, and and I'm Steve Harper. Welcome to the Creative Expression Session. Uh, I'm doing a little bit of thing here with the Google Chat, but anyway, I'm really happy to be here and happy to be talking to you guys. And here's the deal: I am a writer, actor, and certified creativity coach. And my website is yourcreativelife.com, and I'm interested in helping people write, specifically actors who are interested in writing. I'm dedicated to helping those people write their stories, and actually anybody out there who wants to write their story, I'm dedicated to them doing that. Very excited about all of those opportunities. And you can go to my website, yourcreativelife.com, and find out a lot of different things about me, which I hope you do, and I hope you will. It's been a super exciting January. Super exciting January for me, Steve Harper. So why is that? That is because I have been in pre-production for my web series, which is called Send Me, an original web series. You can find out more about that on a website that is sendmebacktoslavery.com. And yeah, it's super fun. It's about this, it's a drama, but it's about a black woman who can send black people back in time to slavery, sort of as an extreme sport. And if that sounds odd or interesting or strange to you, you should go to the website and check out what it's all about. It's a really interesting and intriguing, dramatic web series that I'm working on now. And I've been in pre-production for that all month. And we did some crowdfunding last year, and it's a super exciting project. But that's part of the excitement of my January. I've been working on Send Me, my web series. I've been working with a producer on a TV idea and a collaborator. And I've been teaching and coaching people like you and others working on their own writing projects. And so for me, that's been a really full start to 2015, a really auspicious beginning of energized, focused coaching and helping other people to do what they do and to do really what's in their heart. And that's the thing that's most important to me. I stand for full self-expression, and I give people, I hold space for people as they sculpt out and create the work that they're up to. So I really am interested in that and continuing to do that as well. And there's been so much abundance for me over the past month, as I said, and over the past year. And I really am interested in passing on that wisdom. So, I was trained as an actor, and I went to acting school, and I got to the point as an actor where what I recognized was out there in the world that as an actor, I just was out there asking for people to help me, which is a fine thing, but just always showing up and saying, I could be good for that job. I would love a job. It was always that constant piece. And at some point I realized, I wanted to transition to actually creating my own work, to creating the opportunity to populate the dramatic world with the stuff that I was interested in seeing that I wasn't seeing. And so that's in some ways what my coaching and my writing has all been about, is reaching out and doing a larger sort of creative vision of the world. And I want to invite other people to lean into that larger creative vision of the world as well, which is why I do what I do. So I believe that the industry now looks at me differently, and I look at myself differently, showing up in the way that I do as a writer and an actor and a creativity coach. It's an expansive universe, and I think that I invite the expansion and step into the abundance of the expansion. And that's what I invite you to do as well. So I think it all starts with writing. And today on the Creative Expression Session, we are talking about answering the musical question, or maybe not so musical: what are you doing as a writer? What are you doing, right? And by that, I don't mean, are you writing every day? Are you outlining? Are you, using pen? Are you using a keyboard or That's not what I'm asking. What are you doing actually is more about zeroing in on the heart of what you're interested in writing, what you're interested in putting out there in the world. So let's say this. Here's the example. You're out there, you're writing stuff, you're hoping to impress people and to make a difference. You're hoping to really make an impact on the world. And in the back of your head, let's say you want to impress somebody. Maybe it's an agent, maybe it's a manager, maybe it's a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, maybe it's, maybe it's a writer who you want to hire, who you want them to hire you. Whatever it is, you're out there trying to impress. And because you're trying to impress, you are bouncing back and forth between a number of different genres. You are writing dramas, you are writing comedies, you are writing sci-fi, you are writing adventure and romance. And you're just throwing all this stuff against the wall, hoping it sticks, feeling really, in some ways, desperate about making that impact and making that difference. And so in some ways, that's what you are doing as a writer. Very interesting, right? But you might be hitting a lot of genres, but you also might be hitting a bunch of walls. And clearly, you're chasing success rather than looking within. Chasing success rather than looking within. Now, that's fine. No judgment on that. Not necessarily bad if it feels good to you. But if it feels frustrating, then I want to talk about an alternative to that. You can look within. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, here's what I mean. Back in the day, not too long ago, several years ago, I was a member of the CBS Writers Mentoring Program, which is a TV training program for people of color who want to sort of move into the TV world. This was before I've since spent a couple of seasons writing for TV show Covert Affairs, and I'm, as I said before, developing something now. And before I entered the world, really, I had this training opportunity. And in the training opportunity at CBS, we were invited to talk about ourselves as people and as writers. So that was the assignment, to learn how to talk about ourselves as people and as writers. Now, I also want to say, I want to give all praise to Carol Kirshner, who's the woman who runs the program at the CBS Writers Mentoring Program. She's super, super smart. And in fact, she's got this terrific book on my shelf here called Hollywood Game Plan. So this is by Carol Kirshner. She's super brilliant. And so one of the things that I learned from her that I use in my own coaching and that I use in my own writing life, and that is the subject of today, is this sense of talking about yourself and zeroing in on what it is that you want to write, right? So here are the questions that sort of go to this notion of having this story, if you will, of who you are as a person and as a writer. What are you obsessed with? What are you itching to say? What are you interested in creating that you're creating? Like, what makes you interested in the subject matter, in the stuff that you choose to create? Is there some key to everything you put on paper? Everything. Is there some central theme, some deep core at the center of the work that keeps you coming back, keeps you going, keeps you showing up? That's the question. What is your true north, and how do you know what it is? So here's a way that I learned to talk about myself as a result of the CBS Writers Mentoring Program, and we called it the personal log line, or you can call it a nugget, whatever you want to call it. But this is it. This is the one that I use most often. I talk about how my father is a major Catholic and believes in the books of the church, and my mother believes in the books of the horror section of the bookstore, right? So what that means for me is that I would go to Catholic school when I was a kid, and I would come home and I'd say to my mom, "Mom, what's going on in Salem's Lot?" And she would fill me in, right? So consequently, all of my plays and the things that I'm really drawn to, I write about what I call the invisible things. And those are things that people don't necessarily talk about or explore. And sometimes in some of my plays, and in some of my TV stuff, that involves ghosts or spirits or gods or monsters or whatever. But also it involves race or sexuality or culture or religion or status, all of those things. And so that's why I write what I write. Now think about that story, right? Why is that cool? Why is that useful? Number one, it's simple to understand. Right? If you've never seen me before or experienced any of my coaching or any of my videos or been to my YouTube page or any of that, you have this new sense, and even if you have this new specific sense of what I'm all about, right? So it's simple to understand. It explains what I'm up to and why, right? With the little backstory and all that stuff. And it's true, number three, it's true across all my work. So simple to understand, explains what I'm up to, true across all of or most of my work. Now, not only does it describe me in general to employers and that I can use it in meetings, which I have certainly as I'm meeting TV people, but it also explains me to myself, which is kind of a cool benefit, right? So rather than imagining that I'm going to write anything on the planet, not to say that I'm limited, but rather than say, yo, I'm going to write whatever, he's going to write this and that, I can actually say to myself, oh, wait a second, I'm the guy who writes about this kind of thing, right? It takes me inside myself back to myself, right? And allows me to figure out what it is, the truth, the center, the core is of what I'm writing now and what it is I might write next, right? So for example, my web series, which I told you about, Black Woman Sends Black People Back in Time to Slavery as an Extreme Sport, it's really at its heart about, on some level, about racism, right? And about race in this country. But certainly when I began to move toward creating this, I wanted to write about race in a way that, of course, as a person of color, race is always threaded through my consciousness. It's sort of always happening 24 hours a day. And I wanted to find a concept to write about where the thread of race and the presence of race was a constant to the people in the web series in a way, in sort of a mind-bending way that we haven't seen before. So that was my goal, right? We'll see, who knows if I succeed, whatever. But the point is, that's what led me to that space, right? It allowed me to look at this space of who I am as the way I define myself, talking about the invisible things, the things that other people don't think about or write about or express or whatever, and put that on paper. So you see how handy it is, both to introduce it to myself, to remind myself of what I'm doing here as a writer, and also to be able to explain it to other people. You see how handy that is, I imagine. So the big question then becomes, how can you zero in on what you're doing as a writer? How can you zero in? Well, there are 3 steps that I suggest. The first is to find examples, to find the impulse, I mean to say. So to find the impulse, right? Find the impulse within you that makes you write. Now, there are 2 ways to do this. There's the inside way and the outside way. So if you want to explore the inside way, I invite you to close your eyes, take a breath, and imagine you're getting ready to write. You've just put your fingers on the keyboard, or you've pulled out a pen or a pencil, or however it is you do it. You're just getting ready to do it. And now ask yourself, where's this impulse coming from? What's the thing that you want to do with the words on the page? See what comes up around that. And if something comes up, you can open your eyes and write it down, but think about it. Like, do you want to educate people? Do you want to scare people? Do you want to motivate people? Do you want to make them feel something? Right? Where is that impulse coming from? And chances are that impulse is created directly connected to what it is you're all about as a writer. Okay, so that's the inside way, looking inside yourself to find out where that impulse comes from. Here's the second way. We call it the outside way, of course. And that would be to write down, you don't have to do this now, but to write down, make a list of everything you've ever written or everything you've thought of writing. And then begin to look at that list and see what the similarities are. Look at it like a puzzle, like you're looking for the clues. What connects all of these things that you've been interested in, that you're thinking about, that you've put down on paper? What connects them? Again, is it about wanting to do something or say something specific, or what is it, right? And once you've isolated that impulse, whether you do it the inside or outside way, try putting together a sentence about that explains where that comes from. So there's the impulse, which is, I really want to scare people. That's my thing. And then there's the sentence of where it comes from. I had a car accident as a child, and I feared for my life at 3 years old, and I go around with this sense of, that my life could end any moment. And so what I want to do is scare people in my writing so that they appreciate, so that they can step into the world of appreciating life as it is now and live life to the fullest, right? Something like that. So begin to think about that. Find the impulse, that's step 1, either the inside or outside way, and then create a sentence that explains where that comes from. Number two of the way to get to zero in on what you're doing as a writer. Figure out if there's a story to tell, right? Now we've got this one sentence, I have the blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't have to be pithy. This is leaning into that story. It might be about your upbringing. It might be about your childhood. It might be about something that happened last week. What is the story, right? So you might have the one sentence, But now it's time to write the whole story. Write it out. Make it simple, a few sentences, a paragraph. Explain where you were and where it comes from and what you think about it and why it happened and who your parents were or whatever relates to that particular impulse and where you think it came from. Once you've done that, read it out loud. Share it with your friends. Talk to people about it. Practice the notion of putting that out into the universe and seeing what the responses are, right? Sharpen it. Make it more specific. Clean up the details. Whatever you can do to tell that story and to make it tight. It doesn't have to be pithy and witty and funny, and it's not like necessarily you need to tell somebody something that people are going to sort of fall over laughing. You certainly heard my story. It's not hysterically funny, but it is true to me, and so therefore hopefully resonant. So that's what you want to do. Find sort of a good story that you can tell that relates to the impulse. So number one is find the impulse inside or outside way and write a sentence. Number two is expand that sentence into a paragraph to tell the whole story of where that impulse comes from. And number three is to own it, right? So once you've got it down and you're thinking about it, you've tested it out with a few people, now it's about owning it. And what does that mean? That means that as you move forward with your creative work, this knowledge is going to enhance, deepen, and inspire what you're up to. Right? You're going to use this particular story to then craft perhaps the next thing you're going to write, to think about what the things are that you haven't written about that you might write about in the future, right? Maybe to make a list of the things that come to mind that resonate with this sort of mission of writing and what might be next. Oh, I might write about this. I might write about that. Oh, I never did this. Or they did a thing that was sort of similar to what I want to do, but right? So that's one way to own it, is to really lean into the space of how to make that story present in your next several writing pieces. The other thing is, to test your clarity about a story from inside the story. You might be working on something, script, screenplay, a play, whatever, and then you can go back to your draft and you can say to yourself, oh, now that I know that this is what I'm up to, how does that resonate with this piece? And what does that make me write? Do I want to make sharper this or that, sharpen things? Do I want to create, different nuances that speak to that vision that I have? How do I want to do that? Right? So that's how we do it, right? That's a way to do it. First, to recognize the impulse, inside or outside way, write a single sentence about it, expand the story, right, into a paragraph or whatever, and then own it so that it reflects on your work, so that you test your work from the inside, so that you can talk about your work from the outside and see how people respond. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So now I'm going to open it up to questions, or I would, but I think the Q&A feature on here is actually not functioning at the moment. In any case, I will tell you this. I love questions. I have a couple of questions that I thought you might ask, so I'm going to ask and answer those. And you can always email me at coachsteve@yourcreativelife.com. coachsteve@yourcreativelife.com, and send to me your impressions, your thoughts, your questions about this or anything else. So here are a couple of questions I anticipated that you might have. First, the question of how can I own it further? Like, what is that, And one way I think you can own it further is to begin to not only tell the story of what your impulse is to your friends, but also start to tell it at work, start to tell it in business situations. If you're a writer and you're going in for writer meetings, perfect time and perfect place to make sure you fit that in. But if you're at a cocktail party and somebody says, well, what do you do? And you say, I'm a writer. And they say, what kind of stuff do you write? Perfect opportunity to express your story about what it is that comes from your heart, what it is that makes you want to show up at the page to communicate something to the world. Now, here's the other reason why I think this is such an important concept. So often, and in the example that I had at the very beginning, we go around as writers, or I certainly have, and there's the impulse, as I said before, to really impress people. It's like, I want to get this, I want to get that, I want to get this job, I want this person to know, blah, blah, blah. And quite often that kind of approach takes me far away from whatever it is that's in here. Right? It has me on this chase. If only I could get so-and-so to recognize me, blah, 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 right? To have this sort of vision actually stops the chase and turns that boat around. So it really becomes like, what am I interested in expressing next? And then how can I do that in a way that might impact the marketplace or somebody else might find interesting? But really starting with the sense of what it is I want to do and what it is I do and what it is I'm doing as a writer. So I hope you see how powerful that is. You know, it's sort of like the inner wellspring becomes super important. And I think you can also use it if you happen to be writing stuff for somebody else. You can say to yourself, okay, well, I know that this is the thing I love to express. This is the thing I've been asked to write. How can I meld the two? How can I put them together in a way that makes dynamic and dramatic sense? All right. One other question that I thought you might ask is, why do I need this? Why do I need this? So I think in some ways we've already established, you know, that sense of personal responsibility toward your own work. But I also think the clarity is really powerful. You know, when I came up with my sentence and being able to say that I like to write things that are about the invisible things, it really allows me to use myself as a resource. You know, it really allows me to say, and as I've been coming up with like the next thing that I want to write, it makes that list so much easier. It makes it really simple for me to go, oh, these kinds of things, or you know, it gives me a place to start rather than looking at the world and going, wait a minute, I could do anything. When the truth is, although perhaps I could theoretically do anything, the things I want to do are fairly specific and fairly targeted. So why not start from a specific and targeted way of being that leads me to a specific and targeted way of creating and constructing the kind of writing work that I want to write? So that is all about what are you doing as a writer, and how to find that out and how to lean into that space. And, you know, this is really useful to me too, because, you know, what I want to say as we sort of begin to wrap it up is my entire, as I expressed to you before, I started out as an actor, wanted to create work for myself, have become a writer. Now I do both. And my life has expanded. And in the expansion of my life, one of the things that I've recognized as a coach, and certainly as an artist, is that when I went to drama school for playwriting or for acting, I was taught how to create work. I was taught how to show up on the stage or on the page and actually get the work done. But I was never taught how to live the life of an artist, how to live the life of a person who does that. So what are the in-between threads, right? What are the things that are going to connect this writing or acting job and this writing or acting job and my life in the middle? Like, how am I going to bridge that gap? So I feel like a lot of times I'm talking in my coaching life about things that bridge the gap. And I feel like this concept of who we are as writers and what we're doing as writers, whether we're actually writing or not, whether we're preparing to write or thinking about our writing or talking about our writing, those are the kinds of things I think that allow me a little bit more freedom to survive the distance between one project and the next. You know, it's really about that exploration of me between one project and the next. And that is in some ways what coaching actually is. And so, if you're interested in coaching, or even if you're not, or just curious, yourcreativelife.com is the place where you can find out everything about what I do as a coach. I love it because I get a chance to not only help people, but also get to relearn what I know in terms of allowing allowing me, I should say, to ride shotgun in their process, which is something that I think is really fun. And so that's what coaching is all about. Coaching at Your Creative Life happens in a couple of different ways. There's one-on-one coaching, both by phone or Skype. There's also email coaching, which is also one-on-one. And there's our flagship new opportunity, which we introduced last year, which is write your script in 3 months. So it's an intensive 3-month opportunity where if you have a script idea or you're trying to approach an idea and you're either stuck or not quite sure, maybe it's your first piece of writing, maybe it's your first screenplay or your first TV piece or your first play, and you're really hitting a wall in terms of what might be next, write your script in 3 months could be a really great thing for you. It's 3 intensive months of me riding shotgun on your process and giving you exercises to go from idea straight through pages of a script and then to do a script consult at the end. So it's a pretty great, juicy opportunity. And you can find out about that on the coaching page of my website. So take a look there. And now the other thing is, and this is super cool, tomorrow is the 31st, and it's the end of the January sale for Your Creative Life. So there's 10% off any of my coaching opportunities, my one-on-one coaching opportunities between now and tomorrow. So if you sign up for any of those, even if you don't start right away, you could save 10%. So that could be up to, you could save up to $250 if you end up doing it on the write for 3 months, write your script in 3 months possibility. So yeah, so that's Your Creative Life. Go check it out. Feel free to send me emails about your questions and anything else you want to talk about in terms of writing, because that's what I do. That's why I'm here. I love to be in that dialogue with people like you to help you be fully self-expressed and to help you expand and to do exactly what you want to do in the world as a writer. So that's what it's really all about. So thanks for joining me on the Creative Expression Session. I try to do these this year every 2 weeks, and yet for the month of February, I'm not going to do any because I'm going to be in major production on my web series and completely full up on that. And I'm sure to return in March with Creative Expression Sessions that are about writing, but also about some of the lessons I've been learning from crowdfunding, from executive producing, from acting in my own material, from producing, and I'm happy to explore those topics too. And certainly, if there are topics out there that you're really interested in, email those to me at coachsteve@yourcreativelife.com, and I'll be sure to take a look and perhaps plan a future creative expression session, these free calls around that. So thanks again for joining me. Take a look at the YouTube page. This particular creative expression session and the one I did 2 weeks ago and some other videos are on my YouTube page. And so feel free to visit those and watch this again if you want to relearn or take more notes on what you're doing as a writer. And certainly send your friends, send me questions, and happy writing and happy expression of your artistic life in the world. Thanks for joining me.